Hi, everybody. Welcome to A Mighty Blaze. I'm Jenna Blum. I'm one of the co-founders of The Blaze. And in case you are new to A Mighty Blaze and joining us for the first time today, we are a team of 30 creative professionals dedicated to connecting authors with their readers in the age of COVID and beyond, including and especially cookbook authors and bakers. And today we are hosting Blaze Baking with Rachel Levy Lesser, who is in turn going to introduce our very super special guest, Allysa Torey from Magnolia Bakery in New York and other places, and where I stood outside so many times waiting for cupcakes. And today we are going to make Marshmallow Oreo Brownies, which has been causing a Pavlovian reaction in me for weeks, ever since we started talking to Allysa. I'm going to introduce Rachel, and then these ladies are going to bake the Marshmallow Oreo Brownies, and you get all the pro tips and hacks from Rachel and from Allysa. Thank you so much, you guys. I love this. Rachel Levy Lesser is the author of Life's Accessories, a memoir and fashion guide. Her work has appeared in the Huffington Post, Glamour, Parenting, Modern Loss, Kveller, and several anthologies. She is a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and the University of Michigan Business School. In her previous life as a marketing pro, Rach worked on the business side of Time Inc. on magazines including InStyle, People, and Real Simple. When not writing, Rach can be found baking, of course. And Rach, take it away.
Thank you, Jenna. Thanks for the lovely intro. I'm so happy to be here for our second episode of Blaze Baking with Rach. As I say, I'm the Rach. And I'm so happy to have Allysa here today. As Jenna was saying, I am a huge fan of Magnolia Bakery, and I too used to wait in those long lines downtown for the most amazing cupcakes I ever tasted. And in the weeks leading up to this show, I've been making the cupcakes at home, and my daughter was like, those don't look like the ones in the book, but I can assure you they taste like the ones. And Allysa and I were talking a little bit about that offline, and I feel like that's a sign of a really good cookbook, right? When you can make it at home and it can taste exactly like the ones that are in the store. I'm also a huge fan, as a lot of people know, of the banana pudding, and I have been known to order a large container of banana pudding and eat it for dinner, which I think is totally fine on occasion. So we're going to talk to Allysa about Magnolia, about what she's up to now on her wonderful farm, and we're going to bake the brownies. But first, I just want to read you Alyssa's bio, and then we can get going. So Allysa Torey opened Magnolia Bakery in New York City's Greenwich Village in the summer of 1996. After enjoying 10 successful years at the bakery, Allysa sold the business so that she could spend more time with her growing family. She lives on a small farm in upstate New York called Windy Willow Farm with her 2 children, where she raises organic dairy cows, chickens, and grows vegetables. She has written 4 cookbooks and is currently finishing up a 5th. She spends her time cooking, gardening, writing, and taking long walks in the hayfields with her collies, which all sounds amazing to me. So welcome, Allysa.
Hi, it's great to be here, and it does really sound amazing when you put it that way, doesn't it? It doesn't talk about, the snowstorms and all the crazy things that happen on our farm, especially this winter.
For sure. Yeah,
but
I know.
We look forward to walking through the hayfields again soon.
Yes, when all the snow melts.
Yes.
I'm just going to get us started on baking. So I already washed my hands. I'm sure those of you who are baking at home with us, you can follow along. If you want to just watch and talk to us, feel free, and you can watch later. I should say that this episode will live long on Mighty Blaze YouTube channel, which you can check out forever after this. So the first thing you home bakers should do is preheat your oven to 350, which I already did. So I'm preheated. And the first step we're going to do is we're actually going to melt our 4 ounces of chocolate and our half a stick of unsalted butter. So I'm going to do that. And Allysa started to tell us about how we sort of have to really pay attention as we're doing that, right?
Yes, and also it's a stick of butter, though.
It's a stick of butter. I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay. I didn't want to confuse anybody if they're baking along. Yeah. I can make brownies in my sleep now, so that's why I noticed.
I did notice that. Hang on, I got to put in my extra stick. So one of the things Allysa and I were talking about was that this is sort of your base recipe for for brownies, right? For any kind of brownie.
It is. I used to make a lot of different kinds of brownies. And then at some point when I was working on a recipe for a book, and I don't remember when this was, but it was quite a few years ago, I had come up with this recipe, and it was so easy, foolproof, make it in one pot. You don't even need the mixer, and it comes out great every time. So I do use it as a base. Sometimes I put a graham cracker crust on the bottom and put some caramel and pecans on top. We put M&Ms on top if we're in the mood for that. I mean, just about anything works, and it's just such a nice base recipe to know by heart if you can, and then, you know, kind of have fun with your kids, especially adding, you know, the different bottoms and the different toppings. It's kind of like an ice cream sundae almost. You know, you can get in the kitchen with your kids and see what you have in the pantry and kind of make something. So even if people didn't have like marshmallows and Oreos today, for instance, they could make the brownies and come up with their own fun topping to go along.
That's awesome. I have to say, I forgot to mention, Allysa, are we stirring this over low heat or medium heat or somewhere in the middle?
It's over very low heat.
Low heat. I have that going on. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want chocolate to burn.
Right.
You know, some people even do it in a double boiler, but I honestly don't do fancy stuff generally.
I know. I wanted to ask you about that. When we spoke earlier, you were saying how you don't do fancy stuff, and I love that because for all of us home bakers, it's like so refreshing to literally stand here in my kitchen with a pot and a wooden spoon. I mean, nothing fancy, right?
I use like a regular tablespoon from pencil drawer. I actually prefer a regular spoon, believe it or not. It's easier to stir. Have you ever noticed with a wooden spoon, sometimes it's harder to stir batter because it's the spoon's so thick?
It is true. Yeah. Well, I will keep that in mind for the next time I make these. And I have to say, I've made them a couple times in prepping for the show. And you're right. It is very easy. And I completely know it by heart now. And I will never forget it. So I think it might be my new brownie base.
And I have to mention that with all the talk about the brownies this week, I made a batch myself this morning because there was going to be an uproar here. Like, we've been talking about Marshmallow Oreo Brownies all week. The stories are up on Instagram and this and that. And I realized, I'm like, I better make the brownies. Otherwise, I'm going to be in trouble. So right after the chores, I ran in and whipped up the brownies.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think my chocolate is really, and my chocolate and butter base is really nice and smooth. It came out really beautifully. I'll show it to you guys. I don't know if you can see it. So I'm going to turn the heat off and let that cool to lukewarm for about 5 minutes. Right, Allysa?
It's 5 to 10 minutes. You want to be able to stick your finger in it, and it should still feel like warm room temperature. But you just don't too warm that when you put your eggs in, you have a problem adding your eggs. And
while I'm letting that cool, I'm going to prep my my pan. And it's a glass pan. Allysa was saying if you have a glass pan, use it. If you don't, use what you have. I'm just going to put some butter in here, and also after I prep it with the butter, after I grease it rather, I'm going to layer the bottom base with 16 Oreos. Now I laid out 16 Oreos this morning, and then my kids started eating them, so I had to put out some new Oreos. But while I'm doing that, Allysa, can you tell us a little bit about how you started Magnolia Bakery and kind of, I'm sure, all the amazing stories in launching a business like that?
Yeah, whenever you're launching a food business of any sort, it is it's a long, difficult process, and there's a lot of emotional ups and downs, and there's always all sorts of issues that come up that are unexpected, and but it's also really fun and creative, and so you get a lot out of it. So it's I've opened a lot of restaurants and the bakery, and when I opened the bakery, honestly, my intent was that I would be able to make it home for dinner. Because I thought if I opened a bakery, we would open in the morning and we'd have coffee and muffins. And by dinner time, I would be able to be home in my own apartment making dinner, because I had worked in restaurants for so long. That was something that I rarely got to do. So it didn't work out that way because, as we know, Magnolia wound up having the long lines. We stopped opening at 7 in the morning. We started opening at 9 and then 10 and staying up until midnight to kind of accommodate all of the craziness. But it was really fun in those beginning days. I worked a million hours, but we had like a combination of neighborhood people who came in and people waiting online to come in for the first time and all the celebrities and all of that. But it was just a really nice mix of people, super fun. The energy was great. And I spent most of my time at the front counter icing cakes and cupcakes and just chit-chatting with everybody. And it was just, it was a nice thing. I think that's why people came and enjoyed it so much. And that's kind of how it evolved into what it was, because it just was kind of a fun place to be. Besides the fact that hopefully, everything tasted good.
Allysa, can I ask a couple of questions? I'm so curious. When was the moment that you first realized that your business had taken off like a rocket? And who was the first celebrity you remember coming into the New York store?
Those are two really good questions, but I have the worst memory in the world. And whenever people interview me and ask me things we're talking, 20 years ago, actually. So it's 25 years ago. So it's a long time ago. We did pretty well from day one that we opened. I mean, it wasn't like, the store wasn't packed from the first day, but we actually made a profit from the first day, and which was thrilling. And I don't remember, we did get celebrities from early on because of where we were located, right, in Greenwich Village. And we always treated everybody exactly the same. So people felt comfortable coming in, because I always told my staff, don't bother anybody. Let them come in, let them have a piece of cake or pick up their order, and don't make a huge fuss over them. Just be nice. And I think that's why the celebrities kept on coming in, because we didn't treat them any differently. And it just was easier for them to come in and enjoy without, being bothered. But I don't remember who the first ones were. I really don't.
And the amazing cupcakes too. How did you develop that recipe?
The cupcakes were another sort of fluky thing. We used to, when we first started out, we had 6-inch cakes and 9-inch cakes that were available to order, for birthdays and things. And every time I made a 6-inch cake, I'd wind up with the extra batter from the recipe. And I was kind of annoyed because I'd be throwing it out. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? So after a couple of weeks of that, it wasn't too long, I said, why don't I just make some cupcakes? Because I had the muffin pans out from the morning. So I made a batch of cupcakes. It was probably a dozen cupcakes, and put them out on the counter, and people gobbled them up. And then every time I made a 6-inch cake for an order, I made the cupcakes. And then I don't really remember exactly how it worked, but people started really loving the cupcakes. So we started making cupcakes on purpose, not just, leftover from the batter. And it just kind of went on from there. But it was some point, we opened in June, and it was some point in July or August that we started first making a lot of cupcakes. It happened pretty quickly.
That's so cool. I love that. If you notice our background now, we have the cover of one of your cookbooks, At Home with Magnolia, up there, which have the most amazing cupcakes on them. And I have to say, I'm a cupcake. I'm a sweets everything, obviously. I think Jenna is too. We love it all.
And you see that my cupcakes are not perfect. The daisies look really cute, but the frosting is not fancy swirled or anything. That's how I do them at home.
That makes me feel better.
My phone is, just so you know, my phone is ringing. I guess this is all about live.
This is life. This is life in the pandemic. You're in the farm. You're at the kitchen in the farm in your hat, looking fabulous.
From the 1960s with the regular ring. It only rings 4 times though. I think it's that number 4.
I love it. It's someone calling for the recipe.
Yeah, they're saying like you're so popular now because of this. I love the fact that you're on the farm. Can you describe the farm a little bit to us? It's called Windy Willow's Farm, right?
Yes, when I first moved here, I used to live about 10 minutes from here, so I didn't move far, but I always wanted more land and more animals. I've been a big fan of cows pretty much my whole life, so I always wanted cows, and people said, you're crazy. Once you get cows, you won't be able to leave the house, which is true. So I moved over here and I renovated the house. It was a huge renovation process to renovate the house. The barns, the landscaping, everything needed to be done. But again, it was kind of like opening up a restaurant or a bakery. It was a really fun, creative process. And a friend of mine, while we were doing the landscaping, we realized that there are these sections of out towards the pasture that were very wet. So as a housewarming gift, he bought me 2 willow trees and planted them for me. So that's how we came up with the name of the farm, Windy Willow Farm, because it is so windy here. You come up from town and people are like, I should have brought 3 more hats and an extra coat. Why do we always forget to do that whenever we come to your house? It's beautiful down in town. The sun is shining. We come up here, we feel like it's a tornado. So,
Wow.
So that's where the name comes from. And it's just a small family farm. I have 67 acres. I don't use most of them. We have mid-sized miniature Jersey cows. They're dairy cows. And chickens, and we grow all organic produce. We grow most of our food for the year for ourselves, and we sell at farmers markets. And yeah, and
Cool.
it's a lot of work, but it's also very rewarding, and I love it. And my kids, if they could run in here right now, they'd be going, "We hate the chores. We hate the house."
Well, people can, there was just the link to your website on the farm posted, so people can go check that out and see what you're up to on the farm and some of the products you're selling up there and some of your cool recipes. But I just want to interrupt you. I could sit and listen to you forever, but we want to get moving on the next step, because I just did the very fancy finger touch, and I noticed that it is warm. It is just warm. So I think we're good to go to add to the brownie mix. And the next thing we're going to do is I have everything prepared. We're going to take a half a cup of flour and mix it in a bowl with a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So if you guys are baking at home, follow along. But like I said, you can always do this later. So we're going to mix that together. And then it's just really simple. Like Allysa says, this really is a simple recipe. What you're going to add to your pot, it's sort of a 1-pot dish. You're going to add 2/3 cup of sugar right here. And we're going to start in. It's good. It already smells good here, but it's starting to smell really good.
I wish we could figure out a way to broadcast the smell of these baking shows through to our viewers. Allysa, do you use special like fufu, salt and sugar? Like, do you use organic sugar and Himalayan sea salt? Or
I do use organic sugar because we eat primarily organic. But as you can tell from Marshmallow Oreo Brownies, we are not crazy, healthy organic people that we can't have fun with our food as well.
You're saying Oreos are not organic?
Oreos are not organic, and I guess you could go ahead and make this with like an organic chocolate sandwich cookie, but it just doesn't have that same ring to it, does it? Marshmallow Oreo brownies should be made with Oreos.
Yes,
but
I'm going to add 2 eggs, by the way, speaking of organic.
You can make this whole thing with organic. They sell at Whole Foods, for instance. I think you can get even organic marshmallows in a bag if you chose to. Now, we eat primarily organic, but when it comes to things like marshmallows and Oreos, I just order them on Target, just like everyone else. And I do not use fancy chocolate for these brownies. I use the Baker brand from the supermarket, Baker's Bittersweet Chocolate. I've used that my whole life. I have trouble straying from that, to tell you the truth, because it's kind of like this childhood thing. That's the same box that we always bought when I was growing up. And I don't feel the need, because again, it's not a fancy dessert. I don't feel the need for special fancy stuff.
Yeah. It's reassuring.
Very long-winded answer, I guess.
No, not at all. I feel as though I have such awe of professional bakers, and I feel as though, oh my gosh, you guys have all the goods on, like what are the special ingredients to use. And these shows have taught us bakers are just like us. You can use the Oreos. You can use your salt that you use for your table. You can use the baker's chocolate, right? So
you can use a real spoon.
And you know what the thing is? I think there are plenty of bakers and chefs that do use all sorts of fancy ingredients and have those long recipes that you look at. I even look at them and say, I'm not making this. This is way too long, and so, that's why I try to make my recipes simple. Even the ones that are a little more complex, I try and simplify them and make them so that if you look at them as a home baker, that you can see that you can kind of get through it. I separate the steps and just try and simplify it so that you're not overwhelmed and you can make it and it's going to come out really good.
Awesome. Well, so for those of us following, I feel like for those of us following at home, we have the chocolate and the butter. We added the sugar and the 2 eggs, and the last thing we're going to do for the brownie base is add the 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and the flour mixture. I should say, while Allysa was telling us about the launch of Magnolia, I did put in my Oreos on my greased pan, which was fun. And 16 Oreos fit perfectly on this 8x8 glass pan. So there is a little math involved in the Blaze Baking Show, right?
And well, the whole idea of that is that then you can cut them into 16 brownies, and that each one has a brownie on the each one has an Oreo bottom. I just
that is like a wisdom of Solomon thing. Then nobody is fighting over the brownies that have the Oreos on the bottom. Everybody gets an Oreo.
Yes, and there's so many Oreos on top. I don't think that would be a problem anyway, right?
That's probably my most favorite part, and Allysa's going to give us some tips on that towards the end with the Oreos on top, because after I showed Allysa my first picture of the Oreos on top, she's like, "We got to talk to you about chopping those up a little more smoothly." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. I get a little impatient at the end. I just want to eat them."
Yes, I have friends that say the same thing. I am used to that, but like you said, it tastes the same regardless.
So good. Do you have a comfort food baking recipe that you return to yourself over and over? Like if you're feeling blue, or there's too much wind or too many cows, too much rain. You just
Every day. Okay.
Yes.
The thing is, because I have so many recipes and so many cookbooks, I actually make different things pretty much all the time. We don't eat the same things very often, in terms of food. We eat all sorts of different things, and we don't tend to repeat for months. And it's kind of the same thing with baking. I bake almost every day, I would say. Either a dessert or a muffin or something on most days. But I don't tend to make I haven't made marshmallow Oreo brownies, I'm gonna say, for probably 8-9 months, I would say, before today. So it takes me a while to kind of make something again, but I have so many favorites, and so it's kind of hard to answer that question. And I get really excited about each one. Like when I come up with a recipe, I get really excited about it, and then I have to post it and share it. So it would be like my current favorite.
Nice.
Well, on your website, and when we were talking about it, wasn't this recipe the first one you put up there for the marshmallow Oreo brownies? Yeah.
I had just made it for the first time, and I thought this is kind of a really good representation of me and my style of baking. And I was going back and forth as to whether I should post a baking thing or a cooking thing, and I just thought that really kind of represented me, so I put that one up as my first recipe, and it was about 3 years ago, actually, in February, I believe.
I love that it was your first recipe. I don't know why. That struck me as really nice. Well, I just want to tell you guys that this smells so amazing, and this is basically the base, which was made in a simple pot. And now what we're going to do is we're going to put this on top of our lovely Oreo base. So it's sort of base on top of base, right? So I'm going to do that now. You guys can do that at home. I'm going to take this off here. I got a lot of things going on here in the home kitchen.
You do. Allysa, how do you invent your recipes? You just said, when I invent a recipe, I get really excited. To me, that's like composing a piece of great music or something. Do things just come to you in the kitchen or with the cows or while you're asleep, dreaming? How does it work?
My dad used to ask me that all the time. He's like, "How did you come up with that recipe?" I used to come up with a lot of recipes when I was driving, because I used to drive from New York City up here when I had a house up here, or a weekend house, I should say. I drove back and forth a lot. So I would just be kind of daydreaming and driving, and I would come up with recipes. I would just think of, oh, that sounds really good. And it would just come to me. Same thing cooking as in baking. And with marshmallows and Oreos, I have to say, I have always liked marshmallow and Oreos as an ice cream.
Oh,
yeah. So I used to, when I was younger, I would get peanut butter swirl ice cream and put marshmallow topping and Oreos on top. And I always really liked that combination. So I've actually kind of gone back to that flavor combination a few times. And so that's how I came up with the marshmallow Oreo thing. But as a brownie, I haven't done it as a brownie before.
We are speaking the same language, because I would totally get that for ice cream. That's like perfect.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, this the brownie mixture is right on top of the Oreos, and like Allysa said, it just surrounds it perfectly. Every Oreo is covered. It smells amazing. I'm gonna put it in the oven now for 30 to 35 minutes. What I've noticed with this recipe, my oven might run a little hot, so I just put in 30 on the timer, and mine have been done after 30. So, yours at home might take a little longer, or you might want to check on it before then.
Yeah, you just don't. People sometimes overcook things like brownies or blondies because it's not like a cake. You don't need it to come out perfectly with nothing on it, because it continues to cook in the pan a little bit once you remove it. So you don't want it like gushy when you stick the cake tester in, but a couple of crumbs, not a problem, because you don't want a dry brownie.
Got it.
Do you use a knife for a cake tester, or a cake tester, or a toothpick?
I use a cake tester, one of those skinny metal ones.
Okay.
That's what I like.
Nice.
And I know Rachel had questions for you about your specialized equipment, which is like the spoon, the cake tester. Rachel, you want to ask?
I know. I felt like I was being so fancy and using my wooden spoon, and Alyssa's like, I just use a regular spoon. So we're actually going to get to that now. That's perfect segue, because while the brownies are baking, we're going to make the topping.
Ooh.
And the topping recipe is so fun to make, the topping part of the recipe, I should say. But it does call in the recipe that you should blend things together with a blender. And I happen to have my trusty KitchenAid blender, which I think is like the star of the show. Maybe it's like should have its own Twitter page or something. So for those of us at home who don't have an electric mixer, can they use, I'm sure they could use a handheld mixer, or can they just use a spoon? What would you say about that? And in general, about not having all the tools that a more seasoned home baker might have?
Well, the thing about anything like a cream cheese type icing, if you don't have a mixer, a hand mixer or the stand-up mixer, and you did want to use a spoon, for instance, you would have to let your cream cheese get a lot softer. Otherwise, it's going to be really tricky to get the cream cheese smooth before you add the marshmallow to it. So that's the only, because it's not really a frosting, but it's sort of a frosting that you're putting on top. It's almost like a cream cheese icing. That was kind of my thought process when I developed the recipe. Is it's got cream cheese, a teeny bit of butter, like a cream cheese frosting would have. But then instead of adding sugar, you're adding your marshmallow. So that's taking the place of your sugar for sweetness. And that's kind of why you do want to use a mixer if you can, either stand-up or regular, because it just gives you that nice, smooth consistency that you want for an icing. Okay. So I wish I could answer that question.
No, that's good. I think that helped it. I sometimes feel spoiled by my friend, the KitchenAid. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, and you guys can see I'm stirring something else on a pot. I have a smaller pot, and in that, I've done this a little bit ahead of time in the interest of time. What I've added, and you guys can do this at home, I've added into this pot on a very low heat, and it'll cook very quickly, is 2 cups of mini marshmallows, which I had here before. Again, children got into the bag before I told them it was that children or teenagers, just so you know, they should know better. So 2 cups of the marshmallows, and then marshmallows. Yeah, 2 tablespoons of heavy cream. I already put mine in. So if you guys at home want to stir those up, the reason I did it is because before we get to mix them with the butter and the cream cheese, like Allysa was just talking about, they have to cool a little bit. So I wanted to make sure mine was already cool, which they are. So, you guys should feel free to mix at home. This is such a fun thing to do in a pot. So.
Marshmallow fluff, but with cream cheese.
Yes. Yeah.
Everything is better with cream cheese. Everything is better with butter. Allysa, we had a question from the audience. When do you know something is done when you use your cake tester for your brownies or any confection? How can you tell that it's done?
Well, it is different. Like I was mentioning, it's different for brownies or blondies than it is for cake or muffins. And generally in the recipe, it will tell you, at least in my recipes, I will say for a cake, for instance, I will say you put your cake tester in and you want it to come out clean for a cake. For brownies or for muffins, moist crumbs attached is fine because it's in a smaller, specifically like for muffins or cupcakes, even more so than like a brownie, because it's in smaller pan, it cooks more after you take it out of the oven. So again, if you don't want it to be dry, you're taking it out just a little bit earlier because it's going to continue to cook.
I did not know that, and that is why I have been making dry brownies and blondies my whole life. So thank you so much for telling me that. It's kind of like eggs, right? Like when you're cooking eggs, you want to take them off the flame while they're still, or a quiche while it's still a little bit wobbly because they continue to like maintain their own heat, I guess.
But you should say in a recipe, any recipe should be pretty clear about that because like Rachel was saying, everyone's oven is a little different and so you kind of want to look at that earliest time that it might be ready, but then you want to check it. My brownies, for instance, today took almost 40 minutes in the oven. So there you go.
It's funny too. I think some people I like a crunchier brownie. My favorite part of the brownie is the edges. In fact, years ago, I don't have any more. Speaking of contraptions you don't need, there was this pan that looked like a puzzle. And so every piece you had was an end piece, which was perfect for me because I love the end piece. Some people like the mushy middle better. So it just kind of depends on, like some people like a crisp cookie, some people like a chewy cookie. Yes.
We could talk about that for hours probably.
Yeah.
What do you like, Allysa? Do you like the crunchy or the squishy?
I like the crunchy edges, but I think that the difference is that there's a difference between those crunchy edges on a perfectly cooked brownie and a dry brownie throughout the entire pan.
Nobody likes that.
Two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key, right?
Properly, I think hopefully you just get lucky and somebody in your family likes the middles and someone likes the edges and everyone's happy.
Guys, I will come eat brownies with you because I like the squishy middle. I don't like it in novels, but I like
the crunchy. Perfect.
It's perfect.
You live so far away though.
I know.
I could get to you pretty quickly.
After the pandemic, we're going to all get together and eat all these treats.
Come for an entire farm visit.
We're coming to the farm.
Oh my God, I will totally do it.
With baking.
We are completely coming to the farm.
Yes, be careful what you offer because we will show up in the Blaze Mobile and be like, we're here. We can milk your cows for you. We'll do the work as long as we get some brownies.
I necessarily want to milk the cows, do you?
But we'll bring cookies.
Okay.
And
maybe the kids can milk the cows and I'll clean all the pans for you.
My kids do not milk the cows. They sit patiently and wait for me to milk the cows, actually.
Aww.
But we might get there eventually. I mean, they know how to do it, but it just doesn't happen. Mama does the heavy stuff.
Yeah. Well,
that's the way it goes.
I would love to know what your day on the farm looks like. And we have a question from a viewer. Can you see your farmhouse kitchen? But Alyssa's iPad is propped up in a very specific way so we can see her. It was like the leaning tower of iPad Pisa. So probably not this visit, but when we visit the farm, we will take you through the kitchen. What is your favorite Magnolia recipe? Is that like asking about your favorite child?
Probably the banana pudding, actually. Although the thing is, I didn't start making that at the bakery. I started making that at my very, very first restaurant when I was 23 years old. I had a Tex-Mex restaurant, and I always loved banana pudding. And I started making it there as a dessert we offered on the menu. And that's actually where that recipe started from. And then when we opened the bakery, I said, everyone's always loved the banana pudding. And I know it's not really a bakery item, but let's give it a try and serve it at the bakery. So that's how that happened. That might be my favorite. If I had to pick
that's my favorite.
It's not a baked good, but it's one of those things that I don't get tired of. Perhaps peanut butter cookies. That's another one. I don't get tired of peanut butter cookies.
Those are good too.
And if you haven't tried those, in my original Magnolia Bakery cookbook, the very first cookbook, the peanut butter cookies, they're really good.
We want to talk to you about the cookbooks a little bit. I'm just going to get going on the spread so we don't run out of time, or the icing. So I took my already cooled marshmallow mixture. Your guys at home, it might be cool, it might be not. You can wait a little bit, but all we're going to do for this is I'm going to do it in my electric mixer back here. I hope you can still hear me and see me. I'm adding 4 ounces of softened cream cheese, 2 tablespoons of butter, which mine is at room temperature, and then the marshmallow, and we're just going to blend it. And it's going to be awesome. And I think you'll be able to hear over the blender. You were last time. So
you want to mix your cream cheese and your butter first.
Yeah, I was just
add anything else though. That's
So-
important. It's just like a frosting. You always want to get your butter and your cream cheese, or your butter if it was just a butter frosting. You want to make sure that that's creamy first before you add anything else to it. Otherwise, you can wind up not
Great.
great consistency.
Thank you. So that's going first, and once that's nicely blended, we'll add the marshmallow mixture.
Yum.
Yeah.
So yum. I don't think of banana pudding as being a Tex-Mex item. That's so interesting.
Well, it's a Southern thing.
Yes.
Yeah. This restaurant, I guess when I said it was it was kind of a combination. It was Tex-Mex, but we had a lot of Southern stuff sort of thrown in there too. So I guess that's how it started. But that's even longer ago than the bakery, so it's really hard for me to remember that.
But you carry the pudding with you through life, as one should. Do you ever eat it with peanut butter cookies? That's what I would do. Use them as a spoon. Be scooping up that pudding.
I've done a lot. I've done a lot of scooping with cookies in general. You know, dipping them into various things. That's another way I come up with recipes. I'll be dipping a cookie into something. I'm like, oh, this would be good. You know, we can incorporate this somehow.
Oh, that's so interesting. See, guys, scooping with cookies can be super generative. Who knew? Do you make ice cream in the summer at the farm?
I make ice cream, yes. A lot of ice cream. Ice cream is really, that's one of our favorite things to eat. So, and we tend to have a lot of eggs. So.
Did you guys see me getting to the sticky part? I have it almost in there.
You just look like you're doing something sort of magic over there. We can't tell if it's.
I am. It's magic.
Or
I'm going to blend it all in right now.
we know it's magic because it's Magnolia. Oh my gosh. Allysa, did you always cook when you were a little girl? Did you like mix up, you know?
I've been cooking and baking pretty much since I was probably about 8, I would say.
Oh my God.
I did a lot of baking when I was a child, and I did a lot of cooking as well.
Is it just something that was you, or was it a family thing?
Well, my family owned restaurants when I was growing up, but my parents were not chefs. So my mom actually did not like to cook or bake or garden or do any of the household things that I like to do. So it's kind of interesting, but my grandmother actually loved to do all of that. So my mom always said it skipped a generation and came to me. So it's just, I've always loved to do all of those things, just things with your hands, I guess, which is why I'm not good with the technology stuff or machinery of any sort. If I can do it with my hands, then that's how I do it.
No, Allysa, when somebody was asking before about the home kitchen, she is definitely in the farm kitchen because she said she was propping up her iPad on cookbooks and she had a rooster going on there. And so I've got cookbooks propping up my stuff too. So it's like authentic farm.
But if they want to see pictures of my kitchen, there's lots of them up on Instagram. If you scroll backwards over time, I tend to take pictures of my kitchen. So.
Yeah, Allysa's Instagram is awesome, so definitely go check that out. And also the website for Windy Willow Farm. There's some very cool things on the farm. And she's also selling the at-home Magnolia cookbook right up on the farm website. Yeah, which is this beautiful cookbook that I'm like dog-earing every page because I want to make everything in it.
Allysa, how many restaurants did you own? Susan wants to know. And were they in New York or work in, I guess, is...
Well, my family owned quite a few restaurants. Gosh, yes, they were all in New York City, and I'm gonna say probably 4 or 5, and then the bakery.
Before we do the final steps, which is you should have your icing, we're sort of calling it an icing, ready to go in the bowl. But I thought before that, one of the fun parts is that we're going to chop the extra Oreos that we're going to use to sprinkle on top. So it's 8 Oreos. Is that right, Allysa? About 8 Oreos. So I have them on a cutting board here. I have a big knife. And I think the idea is we want to make them into all different sizes.
Well, that's kind of what makes, I mean, honestly, it probably tastes just as good no matter how you do it. But when you see cakes, when they're done really pretty for photos, and you see like all the nuts sprinkled on top. There's usually like big pieces and little pieces and, you know, kind of dusting of nuts. That's what makes it look prettier if you chop things in different sizes and you take your time sprinkling. This is when you've done a lot of cookbooks, you learn how to like style your food. So if you want it to look really pretty, it takes some time and chop up different sizes. And
all right, I'm going to aim for it to look really pretty.
So there you go.
I'm going to do that.
That's how I do it. You can start by just cutting each Oreo generally into like 6 pieces with your knife, and then you can chop some of them up a little bit smaller and keep some of them like in the bigger chunks.
Okay. And you guys at home who are baking along with us, you're going to have to post your pictures and send them to us so we can see how pretty your Oreo marshmallow Oreo brownies look afterwards.
We would love that. We will send them to Allysa and we'll post them in the Blaze newsletter and on Blaze Instagram. We love to see how this turns out. Allysa, one of our viewers wants to know, what is your best baking tip?
Probably make sure that you really mix things properly. Use your spatula or your spoon, whatever you're using, and really get the sides and the bottom and make sure you've incorporated everything, you know, in between steps. Actually, Rachel and I were talking about that too. I think when we were on the phone recently, we were saying how neither of us take a lot of time to measure things. And I had to admit that live here, but it's true. I don't take all that much time. I measure properly, but I am not really fanatical about it. But I do think mixing properly is really important, and also making sure that you get all of whatever the ingredient is out of like the measuring cup into the bowl. So if you had your eggs or your vanilla and your milk mixed, use your spatula and get it all out. If you don't do that, you could leave a tablespoon or two in your measuring cup, and that's going to really affect your end product.
Mm-hmm. Or your finger, and you can then eat it, which is kind of what I do, which is probably why my stuff doesn't turn out looking or tasting like your stuff.
This is what I tell my children. I'm like, I'm constantly pushing them. I'm like, you can't keep coming in and touching that. I'm in the middle of it. You have to wait till the end because you're gonna like screw up the whole thing.
I know people do. We have talked about that, about how we're not such sticklers for the measuring. Like, I'm not one of those people that measures it and then goes perfectly, but I do try to see that it all goes in there. And I figure it all sort of comes out in the wash. And after you've been baking for a while, if you see that it looks a little too dry, you could add a little more, whatever, oil or milk or butter, whatever it is, or vice versa.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I think I did an okay job with my chopping. I think it was better than last time.
Can we see? Can you try to hold it up to the screen?
It's not often that I chop Oreos with a giant knife.
No.
Yes, it is.
No, I don't do that often.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Here they look really good.
Oh, they look amazing.
Well, I learned from the best.
What kind of knife are you using? What kind of knives do you guys use? Does that make a difference?
I actually use I use my chef's knife, which is a Sentoku knife, the flat, the one that has the flat bottom, which supposedly is for chopping vegetables, which it is awesome for that. But I actually use it if I'm chopping things like Oreos as well, because it has the flat bottom, makes it a lot easier to chop than the normal chef's knife, which has the curve at the end. Mm. So I know not everybody has those, but you know, a lot of people have more things than we think these days. So if you have one of those, that one is ideal for chopping most things, not just vegetables. I use that for pretty much everything, and I don't allow anyone else to touch that knife.
What is it called again? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yeah. A Sentoku knife. It's a Japanese chef's knife.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I mean, it's definitely a really common knife. Most people do own them these days, I believe. Mm. But I can't say for sure because I don't really get off the farm very much. So
we can take a poll for you.
Yeah, I'm using a set of Henkel knives that I have from a long time ago, and they seem to work really well. I keep them sharp, which is, I think, really important. So I know you guys at home have your brownies in the oven, but because this is a magical cooking show, I already have a brownie base that I made earlier today already cooled and out of the oven. Like magic. This is like the real deal. So this is in a aluminum pan because I only have one glass baking pan, but you know, whatever you have is fine. And now the good news is that I'm going to have an extra base when it comes out of the oven. And my family said, well, what are we going to do with that? And I said, well, I guess we'll have to make another topping. later today to put on top of that. Maybe we'll try it with M&Ms or something.
M&Ms and Oreos. That actually.
That sounds really good. Yeah. So I'm going to take the frosting off from my bowl and mix it on here. Let me get a little spreader. It's a very high-tech term.
My puppy now knows whenever I take a spatula out of the ceramic dish that they're in and start scraping a bowl, he knows that he gets to then lick the spatula. So he is attuned to the sound of a spatula. Allysa, what do you have to cook with? Like, what accoutrement besides the good knife, besides the cake tester? Like, what else is an essential in the kitchen?
Oh gosh, honestly, I have those things. I have a stove from the 50s. It's a beauty range stove from the 50s. So that is really not high tech at all. And it cooks everything a little bit slowly. None of the burners get too hot. People come over and they're like, my goodness, it takes 45 minutes to boil water for pasta. Hey, it's not a big deal. I'm just used to it. I really do only have 2 knives, the one that I said that I love, and then I have a second knife that other people can use when they come over.
Guest knife.
I do have my KitchenAid mixer, which I use all the time and I love, but I really did. I bought that KitchenAid mixer when I wrote my very first cookbook. That was my gift to myself, was buying that mixer, because I had never owned one. So I didn't even have one when I wrote the first cookbook. So I bought that. I do have a hand mixer, but that's from the 50s. It's called a mixette. It's like turquoise blue. I still have the a silver egg beater that I used since I was a child. It was my grandmother's. So since we didn't have, a hand mixer or any of those things, I actually used an egg beater for most. So we still use that here at the house. We use that for eggs. We use it to make custards. I use that to make whipped cream. And my dogs and cats, actually, as soon as they hear that coming out, they all just run from wherever they are and gather in the kitchen. And I have 5 all together with the dogs and the cats. And they all want to lick the egg beater with the whipped cream on it.
Oh, who doesn't?
Yeah.
That's like my favorite thing. I'm
going to be fighting with my children and my animals if you were here. See, I don't lick anything as I'm going. It's just not my thing.
So you never taste like the raw dough. You don't lick the bowl, anything like that.
I don't, and I didn't do that when I was a kid either. It's just not. It's not me, but I think I've become more that way as I've been older, because once you work in kitchens, you learn not to eat or taste or anything while you're working, because you would be eating all day. So kind of separate yourself from it a little bit. But when I was a kid, I didn't really do it either. So I don't know what that means in the grand scheme of things, but
it means you're more sanitary probably than my kitchen.
You're well trained.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to say, I bake all the time at home, and when the camera's off, I am like licking. But this is teaching me not to. I have to say, Allysa, your tips for cutting really helped, because this looks way better than the one that I sent you earlier. Here we go.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
I mean, what I like about this too is I think the look of it kind of is, I don't want to say messy, but just like it's not your perfect, perfect looking.
It's like a really nice homemade dessert.
Yeah, a really nice homemade dessert. Yeah.
Rach, can you show it again so we can all drool a little bit more? I see somebody coming into your kitchen being like, I need those. That was so cute. One of the kids just came in and was like, I hear a brownie pan.
I feel like they can smell it and they know.
Yes, I see some legs behind you kicking around on the couch. We see honey. We see
you. Joey, you're on camera. Can you put your foot out of the way? Thank you. That's a 6'2" 17-year-old. Can they see your face? A little bit. I don't know. Anyway, this is it. This is life at home. I think he was doing some homework upstairs and now he's down. So
yeah, so fantastic. And we are actually coming up on the hour mark. Can you give us some final tips on, do you have to let the brownies cool before you cut them? And then
they're best actually if you leave them overnight. Now, whether that can happen in your house or not is questionable. It doesn't happen here, but they taste better the next day. All brownies do, but we generally cannot do that. So we generally do have them for dessert at night. You know, we wouldn't eat them during the day, let's say right now, but we have them tonight, you know, after we're done with dinner. And then, of course, we would eat more tomorrow and the next day, and they taste better as you go. But we wouldn't stop ourselves from eating them tonight. Rachel's like, I'm going to eat them as soon as we're
No,
done with
I
dinner.
am. But you know what? The truth is, Allysa told me that, and I knew that instinctually. But these brownies, the first time I made them a couple weeks ago, of course we ate them, but they were better the next day, and they were better the next day. And
They really are.
It's definitely true. So, you know, I cooked this base early this morning, so they were all cool. This base the second base is going to come out in 5 minutes. So you guys at home, you definitely let them cool before you spread the topping on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like a cake. If you ice a cake while it's still warm, the cake's going to be mushy. The brownies wouldn't get really mushy because they've got a different texture to start with, but it's not a good idea, let's just say. So just hold on to your impulsivity a little bit and just let the brownies cool, and then put the icing on, and then you can go from there. And it is actually, because the marshmallows get a little sticky, it also is a little harder to cut if you don't wait the proper time. But you know, you're at home, we won't know what happens after you take that picture and send it to us. We're not gonna know.
Sometimes people have sent me in their baking when I've been advising them at home, just friends. They've sent me their epic fails, which are kind of fun to see too. So if you have a fail, send it to. It still tastes good, even if it doesn't look as beautiful.
You can eat your fails. That's the best thing about the fails when you bake. Allysa, did you ever have an epic fail, an epic baking fail?
Gosh, I hate to say I haven't, but I just don't think I have.
Wow.
I can't really remember anything. I get recipes in my head, and then I go and I make them. I actually, a lot of times, only have to make them once. I don't even test them like 5 times and do trial and error. Most of the time I make it once and I'm kind of happy with it. Sometimes I make it twice and tweak it just a little bit. But I sort of get these ideas in my head, and then I kind of work it all out. It's almost like a scientific kind of thing with the measurements and stuff. And I work it out all by hand with a pencil, no computer. And then I just make it.
This is reminding me of listening to writers sometimes talk about their writing processes, right? Processes. Like you think of your ideas in the car, a lot of people do, or in the shower. Yeah. So a lot of people write things longhand. So it's just interesting. I think that whole thinking of creative ideas in the car, I think of a lot of stuff in the car too. It's because you're not, you're focused. You're driving. So you're not thinking of anything else. So I think that's a really good thing. Are you working on some recipes right now for the website, Allysa?
Well, I work on things all the time, and whenever I do make something and I'm excited about it, generally I try and post things and get them on the website. I used to be a little bit more diligent about it. Things on the farm have been very busy since the pandemic, because homeschooling and doing the farm is challenging, to say the least. So things like Instagram have gone, I haven't been keeping up with it the way that I used to, but I try. And I really do love to share recipes. It's my favorite thing about cooking and baking is I get very excited about food in general, and I want to share it, and I want people to make it. I don't like to be secretive and not hand out a recipe. I really do like to share and have as many people make whatever it is as they can. So I love it when I post things and people say that they made it and really, their family loved it, or people still send me notes on Instagram and say that, they love the cookbook and they cook out of it all the time. And, so that's great. So I do try and post as often as I can, and, people should follow and post back, because
definitely
that'll inspire me to do more.
For sure. I know what you mean about the homeschooling, not having time. My kids have both been virtual a lot. So I say Instagram is part of the homeschooling now. My daughter helps me do all these posts. I'm like, this is homeschool. Yeah. So definitely check out Alyssa's website, because there's some great recipes. Some are for sweets and some are for regular food. I think you just posted a really cool soup recipe that you'd made.
Duck vegetable soup. Yeah.
Yeah.
Feeling well. That's the day I was talking to you on the phone. We weren't feeling well, so I made duck vegetable soup.
Right. That always makes you feel better. I was happy to hear that. Awesome.
That sounds delicious. Oh my goodness. Well, do you have any final thoughts that you would love to share with your viewers who are said this is so much fun and we're having such a good time. We're learning so much.
Gosh, I don't know. Like I said, just, keep in contact with me because, I've had people complain, say, oh, you haven't posted enough recipes lately. I'm like, well, then, contact me. Let me know that you're missing the recipes because it's just, that's kind of what inspires me to keep, to keep doing it. And I really do love chatting back and forth with people on Instagram and doing all that. I think that's the fun part for me about doing Instagram on the website is just communicating with people who, kind of enjoy the same things that I do, a lot of farm people and cooking people and gardening people and all that. It's fun and interesting. So, yeah.
That's great. Well, if I could just say sort of in closing, speaking of Instagram and things coming up. Oh, the oven's off. So let me just turn that off. I just wanted to tell you guys about, that can go for 2 more minutes, about what we have coming up next month on Blaze Baking with Rach. We are going to be making chess pie, with Beth Howard, who is the author of several cookbooks. One of them is called Miss American Pie, which I think that's such an awesome title. So with Beth Howard and Ron Block, who runs the library system in Cleveland, and he does a lot for cookbook authors in the libraries, and he's a big foodie. So it's going to be a really fun show. And I made a homemade pie crust the other day, and I really, really enjoyed that. So that's going to be fun. That's coming up on March 20th. I know we're normally the last Saturday of every month, but we're doing it March 20th this next month. Also coming up on A Mighty Blaze this week, we have some great stuff coming up. Oh, I put it right here. On Debut Spotlight on Tuesday, we have W.S. Willow and Catherine Seligman. On Thoughtful Bro, we have Nancy Johnson, and I just read The Kindest Lie, which is fabulous. I can't stop thinking about that book. On Mighty Mysteries, we're going to have Andrew Main, and then on another episode, Amy Scher. And on Authors Love Bookstores, we have Mikkel Jolette. And then on Authors in Conversation, we're going to have Heather Webb interviewing Sarah Penner, which sounds awesome. And then on Friday Frontliners, we have Martha Teichner. So definitely check out all these shows on A Mighty Blaze on the Facebook page here. If you can't be live that day, you can always check them out on YouTube. And Jenna mentioned our newsletter. You can sign up to receive our newsletter, which comes out weekly, which gives you information on all the cool weekly shows and happenings and new books coming out. So thanks for supporting that. And
you can eat your brownies while you're watching all these things. You should definitely make a triple batch of Alyssa's delicious brownies and then just eat them all week while you're watching all the good lit things, right?
I have baked while watching some of these shows, believe it or not. So it's good.
I believe it. Such a joy, you guys. Allysa, I could sit and talk to you all day. I would love to come and visit the farm. We all want a tour of the kitchen. So if you look out your window and you see a big, really beat up red Jeep creeping up your driveway, you know who it is. It's us.
All right. Well, we'll be waiting patiently.
Okay. It won't be too long. And Rach, do you have any last things you want to say to your
No, I just want to thank everybody for watching. This has been so much fun. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any tips or feedback or anything else you want to bake with us, let me know. I know I'm getting a lot of suggestions here and there. I'm so happy that Allysa was here. I love getting to know her throughout this whole process. And like I said, I've been such a fan of Magnolia for so long, and Jenna has too. So it's been really fun working with you guys on this, and we'll definitely stay in touch. Absolutely. So happy baking, everybody. And again, post those pictures of your delicious brownies.
Yes,
thanks, guys. See you next time.
Bye.